No one expected that Jimin's tears would fall not because of injuries, not because of physical fatigue, but because of one moment that was too heavy for him to bear alone. A worn photo, a small piece of paper that holds great memories, has made one of the BTS members unable to withstand the emotional turmoil at the end of his military service. And when Jungkook finally spoke up about the tearful night, the army fell silent. There was something much deeper going on behind their smiles and silence. What exactly did Jimin see that night that made him cry behind the cold and silent military barracks? Why did Jungkook, who is usually silent, finally feel the need to speak up? And what is the important message addressed to the army around the world? This story isn't just about two of the biggest K-pop stars serving in the military. It is an emotional record of loss, fear, and reborn faith. That night seemed ordinary. The Gyeonggi sky was a little cloudy, the air was cold as usual, and the soldiers returned to the barracks after regular training. But one of them sat even longer outside, staring at the empty sky while clutching a photo. That photo wasn't great, but to Jimin, its value was far greater than anything he had in his pocket that night. The photo shows 8 happy faces, the members of BTS while backstage on the night of their last concert before officially enlisting in the army. Their gazes in the photo are full of optimism, spontaneous laughter, and hope that has not been tarnished by uncertainty. But that night, amid the silence of the barracks, Jimin looked at the photo with different eyes. It doesn't just see memories, it sees the distance that now stretches. Not physical distance, but rather time, change, and doubt. The crying broke out slowly. No sound. Only his shoulders trembled. Some fellow soldiers looked from afar, not daring to come closer, knowing that something too personal was going on. Only one person finally walked over and sat next to Jimin without saying a word, Jungkook. And that's where it all started. Jungkook is one of the silent witnesses of Jimin's invisible side. In the world of stage, Jimin is a cheerful, affectionate, and full of enthusiasm. But in the military, amid harsh schedules and rigid routines, once deeply buried emotions begin to surface. Jungkook knows that, and that night he knew that silence was more necessary than advice. But a few days after that moment, Jungkook finally decided to talk. In a closed-door broadcast sent internally to several agency staff and recorded for the group's personal documentation, Jungkook said, "I will never forget that night." Jimin Hyung didn't cry because he was weak, but because he realized how hard time changes everything. And I'm scared too. But we know the army is still there. The statement, while not released to the wide public, was leaked to the army's internal community and spread quickly. The reaction was amazing. Many fans wrote letters, drew pictures, and even sent messages of support to the address of the military headquarters just to say one thing: we are here. We're waiting. Jimin's cry that night turned out to be not the only emotional moment. In the days leading up to the end of his service, he began to show changes. Friends of the platoon noted that Jimin became calmer, more reflective. In the last letter he wrote, and saved by an instructor, who later shared it anonymously with the Korean media, Jimin wrote, "I'm afraid to get out of here. It's not that I don't miss the outside world, but because I don't know if the outside world still wants us the way it used to." The sentence shook. For a world star, the fear seemed very human. There is no luxury in doubt. There is no stage amid the piercing silence of the night. But precisely from that fear, Jimin began to reinvent himself. He finds a new meaning of friendship tested in the most difficult conditions. He discovered that silence can be much noisier than the cheers of a concert. And she realized that being an idol isn't just about performing. It's about being strong even when no one is looking. Jungkook conveyed one more thing that touched the hearts of many fans. It says, "Jimin Hyung is the most powerful person I know. But that night I knew, even the strongest man needed room to cry. And I was honored to be there with him." This is not just a confession. This is a reminder that even idols are human. They have the same fears, doubts, and hopes as the rest of us. Jimin's night is not over. It was the beginning of something new. Not only for him, but also for the entire army who realized that BTS's journey is not a perfect story without gaps. It is precisely those cracks that make their story so real. Now, as their last days in the military draw to a close, the big question is, what will happen after this? Will the scene feel the same? Will the sound of cheering be as loud as it used to be? Probably not. The world is changing. But one thing remains. The love they have cultivated over the years will not just disappear. That night, when Jimin was crying and Jungkook was quietly sitting next to him, the real army knew that they weren't just supporting idols. They are watching humans grow, hurt, and rise again, and it's worth more than anything that army. The world awaits them. But that night, before it all begins again, we are reminded that love, in the form of tears falling silently, is the most powerful reminder of everything we have ever believed. Are you ready to welcome them back? A cold night in Gyeonggi, a piece of worn-out photograph, shoulders trembling in silence, and the silent presence of Jungkook next to Jimin. All this forms such a strong and touching emotional picture. However, the question is now, do you really believe that all this is happening as it is preached? Or is this just a dramatic narrative designed to stir feelings and, furthermore, maintain fan loyalty at the highest emotional level in the fast-moving world of information, especially in today's digital era? Not a few content that infiltrates the public space with a convincing appearance, but actually has not gone through a complete verification process. Articles, TikTok videos, YouTube interview snippets, and Twitter tweets are often the primary sources of these narratives. But how many of us actually pause and ask, is this a fact or just an emotional fabrication? The events of Jimin's cry and Jungkook's emotional confession do feel very human. But isn't it precisely because it feels too perfect, too touching, that we need to be aware of its validity? Who recorded that silent moment? Who was the witness who witnessed their interaction in the quiet night behind the barracks? And more importantly, is there any truly compelling evidence other than the claimed anonymous statements coming from fellow soldiers or military instructors? Let's take a deeper look. This narrative creates a neat emotional plot: doubts, fears, tears, the presence of a best friend, and finally hope. Do you feel this pattern is too ideal for a real event? Is it possible that this is a very effective form of emotional engineering in order to arouse mass sympathy while maintaining the relevance of idols during the vacuum of their conscription? It should be emphasized that this information is mostly compiled from a collection of secondary sources circulating on various social media and fan forums. Call it TikTok with short videos full of dramatic music, YouTube with sensational thumbnails, or Twitter, which is fertile ground for unverified rumors. Are you sure that the truth can be fully constructed from this piece of viral content? We do not claim that this event is entirely a lie. But let's reflect together on the possibility that the collective emotions of fans can also be a very powerful tool in the entertainment industry. As the world awaits BTS's return from military service, is there a covert strategy to keep the public conversation about them never dead, even when they're inactive? Also consider the economic and management aspects of the entertainment industry. A group as big as BTS has a management team, promotional strategies, and even media analysts who are able to shape the public narrative according to the needs of the time. So, does this Jimin crying behind the barracks story really come from real events? Or is it just an emotional script carefully designed to re-establish closeness between idols and fans? Let's take one concrete example. Jungkook's claimed statement came from an internal broadcast. Did the public ever actually see or hear the broadcast? Is the clip officially available? Otherwise, how can we know that the words were really spoken by him and not a third-party interpretation? This is the reason why healthy skepticism has become so important in today's information age. We live in a sea of data, but not everything that looks convincing is true. We must ask, who is the main source? Is there an original recording? Does the reporting media have a reliable reputation? Why is this narrative emerging now, and who benefits the most? Because it could be. You're being led to a very subtle form of emotional manipulation. Manipulation that is not directly harmful, but still affects the way you see public figures, trust the media, even assess reality, and yet, on the other hand, you can also trust. Not all emotional narratives are false. It could have been that the moment actually happened and leaked organically by someone who actually witnessed it. Aren't public figures like Jimin and Jungkook also human beings who have feelings, have fear, and can cry without a stage? This is precisely where it is important to maintain a balance between empathy and rationality. We can be touched, but we must be critical. We can cry with them, but do not forget to ask, what is the motive behind the spread of this story?